Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Truck Loan Assistance Program and proposed zero emission loan pilot work group for the fiscal year 2022-2023 funding plan. My name is Danielle Lawrence, and I am the lead staff at CARB on the Senate Bill SB 372 efforts to support medium and heavy duty fleet owners in their transition to zero emission. My colleague, Eric Patton, is also here, and he is the lead staff on the Truck Loan Assistance Program. We're joined today by several other CARB, CPCFA, and CEC staff. We're looking forward to sharing our proposals and also hearing your feedback. So before we get started, we're going to go into a little information on work group and webinar logistics. So today's work group is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be posted on CARB's low carbon transportation webpage within the next 2 weeks. Today's work group is really intended to be a conversation, so throughout the afternoon, we will pause for questions and comments, and at that time, we'll ask that you raise your hand to let us know that you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. CARB staff will then unmute your line. And for those that are participating via phone, please press #2 to raise your hand. And you may also use the Q&A box to type in questions. We'll remind you of these instructions again and throughout the work group when we get to the Q&A portions. And as always, we appreciate your patience if we run into any technical glitches. And if we run into any major technical problems, then we will end the work group and reschedule. We will include a link to today's workgroup agenda in the chat, and that's the same agenda that is being shared on our screen. So today's meeting will build off discussions that took place at the March 15th workshop and for the fiscal year 2020-23 funding plan for clean transportation incentives and the March 22nd heavy duty investments working group. So we'll be going into greater detail and share initial plans for the proposed ZE loan pilot and allocations to the existing truck loan assistance program and the proposed ZE loan pilot. We'll use the feedback from today's discussion and any follow-up input to draft our funding plan proposal. So if you have any comments after today's work group that you would like to submit to us, please do so by next Wednesday. So 1 week from today, the 11th, for your comments to be considered for the draft funding plan. I'll also add my email address to the chat. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Patton to give some background on the truck loan assistance program.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Now we are going to move into a bit of background on information on the loan program, as Danielle indicated. The Truck Loan Assistance Program was launched in 2009. The program utilizes Air Quality Improvement Program funds to help small business fleet owners affected by the in-use truck and bus regulation that fall below conventional lending criteria for traditional financing to secure financing for upgrading their fleets with newer trucks. AQIP is the only source of CARB funding available for the Truck Loan Assistance Program. AQIP funds provide incentives to reduce emissions of criteria pollutants and toxic air contaminants with concurrent reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. In the current program, funds are set aside based on a percentage of each enrolled loan amount in each participating lender's loan loss reserve account to cover potential losses resulting from loan defaults, so loans can be offered at more reasonable rates. CARB staff have capped the interest rate in the current program at 20%. As 2023 approaches, the model year schedule in the truck and bus regulation will come to an end, and 2010 and newer engines will be required except for limited exemptions. California is moving toward a zero-emission vehicles future. CARB's Advanced Clean Trucks and upcoming Advanced Clean Fleets regulations will accelerate the number of medium and heavy-duty zero-emission purchases to achieve a goal of zero-emission California truck and bus fleet by 2045, everywhere feasible, and for all drayage trucks to be zero emission by 2035, everywhere feasible. The proposed advanced clean fleets regulation is expected to increase the number of medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicles beyond existing regulations from about 320,000 to about 520,000 by 2035, and from about 775,000 to about 1.25 million ZEVs by 2045, with a growing number of ZEVs over time. Additional financing and non-financial supports, additional financial and non-financial supports are needed to encourage and incentivize the transition to zero emission vehicles. Now I'll pass it back to Danielle to talk about the proposed zero emission loan pilot. Danielle?
All right, thank you, Eric. So I'm going to move forward in our agenda to talk about the proposed zero emission loan pilot, as Eric mentioned. So CARB has been allocating a lot of funding towards pilot projects, and there's so much that we can learn from these pilots by evaluating the success of deployments, analyzing project data, and adjusting where necessary if actual outcomes do not meet the original pilot scope. So one example of a pilot at CARB that is also looking to find solutions for small fleets and businesses that are transitioning to ZEVs is the Innovative Small E-Fleets, referred to as ISEF pilot. Based on established programs that have been successful, we know the barriers of transitioning to ZEVs are not limited to simply acquiring a ZEV truck. The ISEF pilot is designed to implement innovative models of ZEV fleet operation and better understand and address the unique needs of small fleets and small businesses. CARB and CEC have been working together to develop the proposed ZE loan pilot, building on the past success of working with CPCFA. The idea behind this pilot proposal is to combine financing for both zero emission vehicles and charging or fueling infrastructure into a comprehensive loan package process straightforward for borrowers. CARB would contribute towards the vehicle financing, and CEC would contribute towards the infrastructure financing. The pilot would allow CARB, CPCFA, CEC, and lenders to learn from small business fleets what they need to make a successful transition and what additional areas of support are required. We'll be talking more about the overall SB 372 bill, the Senate Bill 372 a bit later in the agenda, and how the proposed ZE loan pilot fits in. We know this isn't the answer to supporting all fleets, and this is just one piece of the larger SB 372 portfolio to support fleets in the transition to zero emission. CARB is learning what different types and sizes of fleets need to make the transition to zero emission, and we'll build upon what we learn and determine how it can be applied across fleets. So we're going to move into a question portion for this section. We have some questions planned that we'd like to post to the group, and I would like to give some context to these questions before we open it up for comments. And there will also be an opportunity after these questions to open it up for additional comments and feedback. So the first question is what fleet or business size should be eligible for the proposed pilot? The general CalCap small business limit is 500 employees and a $2.5 million loan cap. CARB has set a lower limit for the truck loan assistance program of 10 or fewer trucks, 100 employees, and $10 million in revenue. For the ISEF pilot, staff are considering a fleet size limit of less than 20 trucks and $15 million in revenue. Additionally, the draft Advanced Clean Fleets regulation applies to fleets performing drayage operations, public agencies, federal governments, and high priority fleets with 50 or more vehicles and a minimum of $50 million in revenue. The draft regulation requires some of these fleets to meet zero emission deadlines starting in 2024. So we've heard comments in the previous working group for heavy duty projects that larger fleets see the secondary used zero emission truck market. So we're wondering, should we open the proposed pilot to larger fleets than what is allowed under the truck loan assistance program? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Katie King to moderate any comments or questions or feedback related to this specific question.
And just as a reminder for those participating by phone, you can press #2 in order to raise your hand. If you would like to make a verbal comment, please raise your hand, or you can participate by leaving a written comment in the Q&A. So we do have one comment so far from Lauren Navarro with EDF. She said she's mainly going to be participating by chat today, and she just wanted to highlight what Danielle said about the loan program being just part of the larger SB 372 program and what is needed to support fleets in the transition to zero emission. We have another comment from Lacey Robertson that says, yes, the program should be open to all fleet sizes. And a question from Jim Corboy. Is equipment remanufactured in California going to qualify under GFO 21605?
All right. It looks like there are more questions coming in, but in terms of Jim Corboy's question about equipment remanufactured in California qualify under GFO 21-605. I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to. If if equipment is eligible for the zero emission loan pilot, eligible for financing.
And then it looks like the GFO 21605 might pertain to the CEC. So I don't know if our CEC representative wants to chime in on that. Elizabeth?
Yes, and I was just looking up which solicitation that is. So that looks like that is the zero emission transportation manufacturing solicitation. I don't know all the details of that solicitation, but I think that equipment produced from those manufacturing lines would be eligible. I think I would have to do more research, but on its face, it seems like it would be okay.
All right, thank you. Russell Smith asks, what are the chances CalCap reopens the EVCS lending program? Is that not relevant to this proposal?
CalCap did the EVCS program with funding from the Energy Commission. So CalCap would need funding again to start up a program such as that. So it's kind of, it's related to this.
Next question, Nick Chiappe. CARB should create a proportional system where every fleet size gets a piece of the pie and allows all fleet sizes an opportunity to access the loan pilot. Thank you for that comment. The next question, what percentage of California drayage fleets have 10 or less trucks and a revenue cap of 10? I think that's 10 million. I'd recommend an increased revenue cap. Next question, will charging and energy management software or hardware be included?
Yeah, this will be the portion of the ZE loan pilot that would be under the Energy Commission. So I can pass it to you, Elizabeth, if you have more details on that.
Yeah, I think, that type of feedback is exactly what we're looking for. So if that is something that should be included, we should definitely consider it.
And then it looks like they also posted a CEC solicitation in the chat or in the Q&A, Elizabeth. So if you wanted to take a look at that, and I'll switch over to the raised hands for now. So Philip Gibbons, I'm going to allow you to unmute, and then you'll have to unmute on your end as well to be able to make a verbal comment.
Okay, I think I'm in. Thank you. This is Phil Gibbons calling from the Port of San Diego. To answer the question on the fleet size, I just held a trucker forum meeting this morning with many of the trucking fleets that operate at our terminals. And these are fleets that range in sizes, but they're on the smaller end. They're not, the major national fleets with 50 or more or hundreds of trucks. A lot of these folks have vehicles, I'd probably say under that 50 mark, and a lot of them might be between 20 to 30 trucks. So I think we should look at raising the number even above 20. If that was on the proposal, I think I may have missed the number, but and a lot of these folks are going to need help. The thing that they stress the most about getting into zero emission trucks are cost barriers, and obviously. So if we could raise that up to at least 30 trucks, I think that would be helpful. And I don't have any input on the revenue cap, however. Thank you.
Great, thanks for your comment. Yeah, we didn't give an actual proposal on the fleet size. We're just asking if we should raise it above the truck loan, the existing truck loan fleet limit of 10 or fewer.
I would definitely think that I would support raising it. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thanks for your comment.
Thank you for that. And I did want to also remind all of our attendees to just participate through the Q&A and not the chat. We do have the chat disabled just to streamline things, so we're able to track your comments better. So if you're seeing the chat is disabled, that's intentional, and please use the Q&A. Our next speaker will be Jacqueline Burns. I will unmute your mic, and you'll have to unmute on your end as well.
Hi, yes. Well, thank you for hosting this today.
I think we lost you there for a minute, but hopefully you should be able to unmute
There we
again.
go. Can you
hear
me
that.
now? No, that's
Yes.
okay. I think there should be some level of cap just to ensure that companies with large balance sheets and that currently have access to capital get lower preference. For Mobility is a company that's creating a solution to provide trucks and charging to the industry as a whole. So all operators of vehicles, and the business models like these should not be penalized by a fleet cap, because we are providing a solution that anybody can take advantage of, and access to capital will only allow us to provide a lower cost to the drivers. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback.
Our next speaker will be Glenn Cho. Glenn, I will unmute your mic and you'll be allowed to speak.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. My name is Glenn Cho with Toyota Motors North America. From our perspective, we do believe this program should be allowed towards all sizes of fleets, whether it's large, small, or medium. And I believe the end goal of this program is to facilitate or make it easier for zero emission trucks to be on the road, and then also create a secondary market down the road. And so one of the questions I do have is, would used trucks be able to be part of this program as well as new trucks? And then the second point will be is also, if you do invite the larger fleets, perhaps this would also invite the larger capital financing companies to participate in the program as well. Thank you.
All right, and yeah, the existing truck loan program does allow for used trucks to be financed. So that's something that we'll have to determine for the ZE loan pilot as well.
All right, and Jacqueline, your hand is still raised. Did you have an additional comment? Oh, thank you for lowering your hand. Okay, and the next speaker, Claire Bachman, I will ask you to unmute, and you will have to unmute on your end as well.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, my name's Claire Bachman. I'm the Fleet Technical Assistance Project Manager at CalStart. And I just wanted to second what Nick said in the chat, his recommendation for a proportional system. And I would add that this proportional system for the loan assistance program to be based on a combination of fleet size and like revenue caps, just because if it's designed that way, we can provide greater funding for, say, the smaller fleets with less capital and base it more on like these two parameters. And I don't know, it's complicated, but it's hard to say no, like, oh, a fleet that they have like 8 trucks, but their annual revenue is like 20 million. To say that they're eligible when they're still in need of technical assistance resources is just seems a little contradictory.
Thank you for that. So are you, just to clarify, are you saying that they should meet one or the other of like the fleet size or the revenue cap?
I think that we should be maybe a little more flexible on both of those distinctions and have more of like a system that's based on the proportion of, different proportion. I don't know how to explain it.
Okay. I think
You got
I think
it?
I have a better idea of what you're saying. Yeah, after you said it
Okay.
again. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Do you have any like other questions about it?
Not at this point.
Okay,
But I'll definitely reach out if something else comes up.
okay, cool.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Gary Sue. I will ask you to unmute.
Hi, thank you. Gary Shui here, representing Two Daughters Logistics. We're a small fleet owner contracted to FedEx. And I just wanted to clarify a couple of comments I made in the Q&A, which is basically that I think that eligibility should be increased more than 10 vehicles. Just thinking about our market and kind of many independent fleet owners that contract to FedEx have slightly more than 10 vehicles. We're all kind of around 12 to 15. Maybe there are some that own more kind of territories, if you will. So they might have more. But it seems like that the program would be able to capture a lot more of operators like us if the number of vehicles was increased. I don't feel like the revenue limitation is, we're nowhere near that. So that's not a consideration for us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for this feedback.
Gary, would you mind just repeating your last name pronunciation one more time so I make sure I get it right next time?
Oh, sure. It's Shui.
Shui?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. All right. And with that, we do have a few more comments in the Q&A, so I'll go ahead and read those out. So Rochelle Pletcher says, to support the transition to zero emission EV units, I would expect that a moderate to larger fleets would be more likely to go first. Thus, increasing the fleet size revenue qualification makes sense. Gary Shui says, small fleet owners, 20 vehicles should be included. Financing fees for our vehicles is around 20% of the loan amount. Kylie Morgan commented, charging and energy management software hardware is a key part of making truck electrification affordable through energy cost savings, as well as reduced need for grid connection upgrades. This would be great to include under eligible costs for the program. Gary Shui, the minimum should be increased above 10. Many independent FedEx contracted fleet owners have more than 10 vehicles, but fewer than 20 to 50 vehicles. And then Michael Mayer said increase the trucks from 10 to 50 vehicles. And that catches us up on the Q&A section.
Great, thank you, Katie. All right, I'm going to move forward to our next question that we have for the group. So question number 2, is there any reason the proposed pilot should be limited to only certain trucking sectors? So any fleet type is eligible for the truck loan assistance program. Drayage is specified as a priority fleet under SB 372. And we have heard comments in previous work groups that drayage fleets need more assistance in transitioning to zero emission. So I am going to turn it back over to Katie to moderate any feedback for this posed question.
Thank you, Danielle. We might have to wait a minute just for those to
Yeah.
trickle in.
I know that
Again,
one was quicker.
just to repeat the instructions for how to comment. If you are participating by phone, please press #2 to raise your hand. For those that are joining via computer, you can use the raise hand feature or submit a written comment using the Q&A feature of Zoom. So we did get a comment from Lauren Navarro. We continue to support drayage as a priority fleet. So thank you for that comment.
All right, and I can move on to our third question. And then if folks do have any feedback in terms of certain trucking sectors that this should be limited to, then please add in your comment. So question number 3 is, which projects and or products should be eligible? So for example, should this be available to property owners that are interested in installing infrastructure, or should we provide financing for trucks that are eligible under HVIP? I know there was a comment already on used vehicles. So I'll open that up as well to kind of tag on to opening up for the last question.
Thank you, Danielle. We did have a couple comments come in.
Okay.
So Gary Schway, given the limited range of class 4 to 6 trucks and range anxiety, last mile delivery trucks should be priority.
Okay.
Thank you for that comment. Philip Gibbons, I support all class 8 vehicles that visit seaports, so drayage, car carriers, trucks with PTO, etc. Thank you for that, Philip. And then Russell Smith, yes, ask the property owners to support. That is consistent feedback that we've heard, so thank you for commenting. Rochelle Pletcher says infrastructure only investments should be separate from the truck financing assistance program. Thank you for that comment. Andrew Neer, from a lender's perspective, how would size and revenue limitations be verified? So that one is a question. Danielle, I don't know if you want to take that or pass to Eric, perhaps.
Yeah, Eric, can you go over how existing fleet size and revenue limitations are verified for the existing truck loan program?
Yeah, yes. It's well, it well when the if a prospective borrower would contact the participating lender that's in the program, and then so they would you know, like in the loan program we have like a eligibility form, and then so they would indicate their fleet size and revenue and other information. So based on that, they would determine if they would be, that fit with the program. So if we were to use some of the same guidelines in the pilot, that we'd probably do something similar.
Great, thank you. So there's an eligibility form that has to be completed by the borrower and is verified by the lender. Is that right?
Right, yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, there's lender and borrower certifications that go with the application that are submitted to CalCap, for example, the current program.
Okay, great. Thanks, Doreen.
Okay, and our next comment is from Leela Rao. Drayage as a priority fleet is critical given the large number of independent owner operators in this vocation. Thank you for that comment. Rochelle Pletcher would also make sense to include class 7 trucks in addition to class 8. Thank you for that comment. Lauren Navarro, one thing your question made me think of is that SB 372 allows for stacking of incentives, for example, HVIP plus loans. So I don't know, do we have any information on that so far, Danielle?
I don't have anything like in addition to that, but that is that could be an option in terms of using HVIP in combination with financing a loan. So that's something we need to look into when we're thinking about the pilot. If we want to, I would say that we would probably move forward with that for the pilot.
Thank you, Danielle. Leela Rao, also inclusion of infrastructure financing with vehicle financing is critical given the high costs of infrastructure in addition to the vehicle costs. Some OEMs are also offering packages that include vehicle and infrastructure, so having financing options to support this business model would be helpful. It's a great comment, thank you. Claire Bachman, I think that at times it would be appropriate for companies that can help secure a location for a charging station depot to apply in coordination with drayage fleets who lease the land where they park their trucks. Thank you for that. And I'll switch over. We do have a little bit more comments in the Q&A, but I'll switch over because Gary Shui has been very patient with his hand raised. So I will allow you to speak and you can unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Just, I think I wanted to explain that even though I don't know very much about the existing program, I would like to suggest including class 4 to 6 vehicles. Of course, speaking selfishly, that includes step vans, but and really kind of commenting on it does seem like, HVIP for our class of vehicles, allowing stacking would make the most sense for us. I know that we're also actively looking at the ISEF program, so maybe some of this will be overlapping. That might be an issue. But also I wanted to point out that, kind of excluding others, like only including HVIP recipients, I think would be difficult to manage just because, for example, we didn't go after HVIP because it didn't really cover the kind of the gap that we saw compared to a conventional vehicle. So we didn't even apply for it this time, even though we were a previous recipient. We actually canceled that as well. I would not suggest requiring HVIP participation as a precondition for participation in this program, even though it would make a lot of business sense to stack them together. So that's kind of one general comment. And then another, in terms of infrastructure, we're also looking into a lot of the different programs available in our territory. And it seems like it seems like kind of the specific on-site improvements like trenching or conduit or those kinds of things, there might be some kind of a gap there. With us in Northern California, understanding the PG&E EV fleet program kind of gets power to the panel, and then maybe there's some other stuff that helps with the panel upgrades. It just seems like having the actual, I guess, supporting financing for getting from the panel or including the panel to the actual charger and the charger itself. It seems like all of that would be helpful. Sorry.
Great, thank you, Gary. That's definitely some good feedback for both CARB and CEC. Also, the existing truck loan program applies to class 4 and up. And SB 372 is specific to medium and heavy duty vehicles transitioning. So I could see the class size being included, aligning there.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker will be Glenn Cho. Glenn, I will ask you to unmute your mic and you should be able to unmute on your end.
Thank you. With regard to the pilot program scope, Toyota would support the idea of both the truck and the infrastructure, but we are kind of curious as what it turns out to be, given the fact that as a lender, perhaps they may be signing up to finance the truck. Not quite sure about the infrastructure side, which I think they should do as a package deal. Secondly is if a entity decides to use a hydrogen fuel cell truck, then would this also then cover, for example, the real estate involved to build a hydrogen station? So those are some of the topics I would say perhaps as part of this pilot that it should be explored.
Great, thank you so much for those comments. We will definitely be looking into that more.
All right, and we do have one more comment in the Q&A, which is from Jacqueline Bruns. Business models that provide fleets as a service should be included. These business models will greatly increase accessibility of zero emission vehicles to independent contractors. And
Great,
that
thank
is,
you for that.
thanks,
Yeah.
Danielle. That's the last one we have in the Q&A for now. And also there are no more raised hands.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, then we'll go ahead and move forward. And there will be additional opportunities to provide comments and questions. So I'm going to move on in our agenda to the second section on proposed allocations. So we are proposing $10 million for the new ZE loan pilot. A $10 million loan pilot would fund approximately 130 trucks, assuming 350,000 average cost per zero emission truck and a 20% contribution rate. So once we determine how much funding we plan to allocate towards the vehicle portion of the pilot, it will help CEC better determine how much funding should be put towards the infrastructure portion of the pilot. So this is a sizable number of trucks to get started in terms of gathering lessons learned and forming future financial supports for this program. We looked at demand projections developed by CPCFA and the need for replacements based on the truck and bus compliance deadline and proposed $18.64 million for the truck loan assistance program. We do expect demand to exceed this allocation. Based on the feedback we received from the Heavy Duty Products Workshop on the 22nd of March, we heard and agree that it's important to have enough funding in the truck loan program to finance trucks that are subject to the truck and bus regulation through 2023. While the deadline for the truck and bus regulation is January 1st of 2023, fleets may not turn over vehicles to meet this deadline until their vehicle registration deadline with DMV. Therefore, we'd like to have financing available for fleets that need to comply with the truck and bus regulation throughout 2023. We do not want to leave any fleets behind, and we will continue to support those that have truck and bus regulatory deadlines. And we'll be looking into ideas on how we can prioritize those that need the most assistance and how we can focus the program. Truck loan assistance program, and it remains steady with over 4,000 loans enrolled per year since 2018 and a loan enrollment of approximately 4,700 loans in calendar year 2021. So I will go ahead and turn it back over to Katie for any feedback on these proposals.
Thank you, Danielle. And just as a reminder again, if you're just joining us, if you're participating via phone, please press #2 in order to raise your hand. For those joining via computer, you can use the raise hand feature to submit a verbal comment or question, or submit a written comment or question in the Q&A feature. So we do have one comment already in the Q&A from Russell Smith. Without secondary market expectations, it's hard to imagine many lenders will jump in to finance 80% of a $230,000 zero emission truck. Thank you for that comment, Russell. And then in the Q&A, Danielle, it looks like Lauren is responding to a discussion you were having earlier. So I don't know if you want to highlight that.
Yeah, Lauren's comment is that we want the money to go as far as possible. And this is definitely something we agree on. So we, in terms of allocating 10 million towards a pilot at this point, we will know how to better scale up in the future and allocate additional funds towards that pilot in particular.
And a comment from Gary Shway, perhaps one option for the pilot would be to offer categories for vehicle loans only versus vehicle plus infrastructure. Vehicle loans at point of sale feel simple to apply for and process.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's an interesting idea also.
And there are no additional, oh, we just had one come in. Jacqueline Bruns, will the pilot be a first come, first serve basis?
That is definitely something that we will have to consider at this point, so long as they meet whatever criteria we come up with, then that's a existing, like, or that's how the existing truck loan assistance program works. So if they meet the basic criteria, then they move forward with processing the loan.
Next question from Rochelle Pletcher. Is the proposed $10 million going to reduce the funds available for the existing truck loan assistance program, or will that be in addition to it?
Yes, this would, with this proposal, the 10 million would be coming from our total AQIP allocation for this year. For the, well, for the, I guess I should be specific on the 2021 to 2023 fiscal year.
And Gary Shway asks, what is the proposed financing cost or interest percentage?
So the interest rate on the existing truck loan assist program is capped at 20%.
And the next question from Bradley Northrop, will these loans be available to all fleets, public and private?
Eric, I'm going to go ahead and pull you in on this question as well, just to verify that loans through the existing truck loan assistance program are for public and private.
It's private. It's
Okay.
yeah, you don't see any like county fleets or anything applying. So
Okay, great. So that thank you for that comment, and that's something that we can consider for the pilot.
Okay, and we do have another question from Laura Navarro. SB 372 suggests things like performance and residual value guarantees and secondary market that should help private lenders want to do zero emission loans. Is this something the program is looking at?
Yes, this is definitely something we're taking into consideration and determining the best way to move forward for that.
Okay, and we do have a couple raised hands. So I will unmute your mic and you will be able to unmute yourself to speak. Our first commenter will be Rochelle Pletcher.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
great. Danielle, I just wanted to follow up on the response to the question of whether or not the pilot program would be coming and reducing the amount of funds available for the existing truck loan assistance program. Because I recall from, I think, the meeting earlier in either March or April that the proposed budget for 22-23 was roughly 29 million for the existing program. So I just wanted to double check and make sure I understood what you were saying correctly, is that the proposal is that 10 million of the 29 would go towards zero emission, or that additional funds are being allocated to that?
Yeah, the proposal is that out of our total AQUIP allocation of 28.64 million, 10 million of that would go towards the ZE loan pilot, and the remaining 18.64 would be going towards the existing truck loan assistance program.
Okay. Wow. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Our next commenter is Gianna Satuda. I will unmute your mic and you will be able to unmute yourself on your end and speak.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can
Yes,
hear you.
I'm on mute.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for holding this workshop today. Really appreciate the conversation. I don't have a question today. I really want to make a comment on behalf of Fluid Truck. Fluid Truck is a peer-to-peer truck sharing platform, and their goal is to increase the number of zero and near zero medium duty vehicles available on platforms such as these to individuals and businesses unable to own or operate their own vehicle fleets, so they can have clean vehicles available to them. So we were pleased to support SB 372 last year and support the budget request this year, because it makes necessary supports available to these operators to really ensure that the operators can transition their fleets to zero emission vehicles, in turn making a more seamless transition to a zero emission future, which we all strive for. We just want to make sure that CARB is aware that Fluid Truck is uniquely positioned to help the Air Resources Board and be a partner in delivering on many aspects of implementing SB 372, including developing and designing the financing tools, providing the tools to operators of small and micro fleets, developing replicable business models that engage private capital, and encouraging emerging flexible business operational and ownership models, to name a few. Just a couple more quick points. We are committed to getting more zero emission trucks on the road in California, and truck sharing ensures that small businesses and independent delivery truck drivers have an access to a wide variety of zero emission trucks. So this in turn reduces the use of high polluting vehicles for last mile deliveries, and it also improves the air quality for local communities and drivers. In turn, Fluid Truck fully supports the implementation and the funding of SB 372, and we'd just like to, stress that we would like to be a partner with you and throughout the implementation process. So really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Gianna, for your comment and feedback and support on 372 and what we're doing here. So we look forward to partnering more as we move forward.
Okay, our next speaker is Matt Schrapp, and my apologies, I didn't ask it sooner, but if everyone making verbal comments could also state your name and affiliation prior to submitting your comments, that would be great. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, Danielle and everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to hear a comment. Matt Schrapp with the Harbor Trucking Association. Just a couple points. I apologize because I did have to join late, so I missed the subsection A and B of part 2 there on the agenda. So I apologize if some of this has already been covered. I did kind of catch a tail end of the comment about class of vehicles being eligible, and it's encouraging that you're utilizing the existing truck loan program as a guidance for potential eligibility moving forward, while it's a medium and heavy description in the bill, if that the lower classes of 4 through 6 are included, but potentially might consider a different contribution rate for the lower GVWR class vehicles in order to keep that higher contribution rate consistent for the heavier classes, as they are markedly more expensive. And kind of a question on the 20% contribution rate, as was alluded to earlier, I think by Russell, that there is a challenge amongst lenders when there's no secondary market established for any advanced technology, that even being in some instances low NOx natural gas powered vehicles, that there maybe is a consideration to increase that contribution rate higher for the heavier class of vehicles. Again, I don't know, lenders exist on risk more or less, and you're asking them to take a pretty large risk on equipment that, again, has no secondary market. And currently there is zero public facing charging infrastructure that's available, especially for smaller operators who don't have the wherewithal to install charging infrastructure on their property, primarily because they don't own the property that they're operating on. So one would be considering scaled contribution rates with a higher contribution level for the highest GVWR category, that being class 7 or even class 8 for that matter. Also on the idea about, sort of on, I guess, robbing Peter to pay Paul here, that the existing truck loan assistance program, and understanding where the motivation is for the state to start transitioning over to zero emissions, taking money away from the existing truck loan program, I think is not helping those fleets that need to transition for ARB compliance. I hate to break it to everybody, but for small fleets, especially right now within the existing parameters for the truck loan assistance program being 10 or fewer on that threshold, I can tell you that these fleets of 10 or fewer are not looking at zero emissions technology in the heavier GVWR categories. I'm sorry to break the news to everybody here, but it's just the challenge is, A, you're purchasing trucks sight unseen. B, you have a limited amount of range on the battery electric stuff for sure. Hydrogen really hasn't fully come to market yet, and you have the infrastructure component going along with that. So it's a little disconcerting to hear that the existing truck loan assistance program will be, I guess, underfunded this year in order to try to encourage folks to get into this advanced technology. Because again, the small fleets they're not going down the pathway of purchasing zero emissions equipment. I know where we're headed in the future, but just right now, it's a heavy lift, to say the least. And if there's money left over at the end of the year after this pilot has been exercised through, that potentially we might want to consider reallocating whatever money's left over to the existing truck loan assistance program. We talk about, and I'm glad that it was alluded to earlier, for folks who would be waiting till their registration was due as opposed to the January 1st date before upgrading. There's just a lot of concern that these smaller operators who are trying to do the right thing and get in compliance with a vehicle, if they can even find a vehicle to begin with, since major OEMs aren't even taking orders for heavy duty traditional internal combustion technology, that you're leaving a lot of people out of it. And the money, while it goes a long way with established lenders, every year it seems like that it's pretty much fully exercised. So maybe a caveat and I know maybe Lauren is shaking her head right now at me, but we need that money in the existing truck loan assistance program. We really do. And then I guess final point is that, $350,000, I understand, if we're looking at heavy duty and trying to average out that number for all the classes, I can understand that, but 350 is typically the base cost. That doesn't take into consideration FET on Class 8 trucks, which is 12%, and then local sales tax, which can be as high as 10.75%. Then almost a quarter of that cost is going to be for taxes alone, where you're seeing it's really over $400,000 out the door. So not sure if those numbers are going to be reflective of the reality of how many vehicles this can actually fund. So just some general comments there. And then I guess the question of, is there a willingness to increase the contribution rates for the heavy duty for lenders to give them a little bit more protection and scale it perhaps from a contribution level, depending on the class of vehicle that is being funded.
Thank you for your comments, Matt. They're helpful and great things to think about here. I think that's something we can really look into in terms of scaling, like scaled contribution rates, depending on the cost of the vehicle, or maybe the class of the vehicle, which obviously is going to change the cost of the vehicle. So it's something that we can consider.
Thank you, Danielle. And we do have a few more comments and questions that have been submitted in the Q&A. So I will go ahead and shift back to that. Jacqueline Bruns, can you please give an anticipated timing for rolling out the pilot and then a follow-up on the program after that?
Yeah, so in terms of timing on the proposed pilot, I will give a little more details on timing later on in the presentation, but we will be going to the board for this year's funding plan sometime this fall. It's looking like November. So after the funding plan is approved, depending on how we move forward with this proposed pilot, after it is approved, we can begin determining like implementation. So we would work through the implementation portion of the pilot, and from then we would determine when it would be available. So I know that isn't a specific answer to your question, but hopefully it would be near the beginning of 2023 that we could make it available, but it definitely would have to be after the board approves the funding plan in November.
Thank you, Danielle. And we have another question from May Wang. My question is on the existing program. I referred the program to owner operators that received a near zero emission truck grant. Many have complained about the high rate or lack of response. What rate assurance can be given to near zero emission loan seekers?
I'll go ahead with this. Like I think we already mentioned that the interest rate is capped at 20%, but I'm not sure about lack of response in terms of the program. If owner operators were reaching out to specific lenders and not getting a response, but maybe a little more context for that question, and we can answer it more thoroughly.
And the next comment from Claire Bachman. Just want to add that I'm in regular communication with various fleets of 2010 or less who are interested in moving their operations to electric. The demand is there. There's just a need for us to provide greater assistance to smaller fleets. Thank you for that comment. Gary Shui, we'd very much like to invest in Class 6 zero emission pardon me, electric vehicles and the loan assistance program appears to be one way to help us achieve cost parity with conventional vehicles. Thank you for that comment. Rochelle Pletcher, as a lender, I agree with Matt's comments regarding reducing funding to the traditional truck loan assistance program. Reducing it by 1/3 in 2022, 2023 seems overly aggressive, given that the overall percentage of zero emission units as a percentage of the total trucks in market or by that point. Thank you for that comment. And Matt Schrapp, I see your hand is up again. I will ask you to unmute and you can make a verbal comment.
Thank you again, Danielle. I just can't type fast enough is my problem. So, I won't belabor this. I know we have a whole hour left on this, and and it's encouraging to hear from folks who are actually engaged in lending, and I wanted to respond to May's comment a little bit that while there is a cap, the reality of lending to small fleets especially, and again, the comment was made that there's numerous small fleets that are interested in going zero emissions. I don't doubt that. The reality, though, in actual deployment becomes a much stickier subject because of the infrastructure primarily. That is the main issue when you think about Class 8 heavy-duty trucks that are engaged, especially in drayage service, that being port movement or intermodal rail movement, that the infrastructure is the key component along with range. It's one thing to be in a smaller Class 6, Class 5 fleet that has a captive location, predictable routes, they own their land, they still need assistance as well. I don't think that is, any secret to anybody here, but when we think about lending in general, it's driven by the marketplace, and lenders mitigate their risk through interest rate. And for better or worse, many small fleets just don't have commercial credit history. And if you don't have commercial credit history, that basically puts you into what we considered a subprime category, because there's no history for the lender to look back upon to see if they're able to make the commercial loans. And you couple that with advanced technology, even the low NOx side of things, it's a heavier lift. And right now, especially because you can't order equipment, the response from lenders on grant funded vehicles is challenging because there's no dealer that's going to be able to place an order for you currently. So it might be helpful, May, if that they're definitely getting messaging from whoever the issuing grant agency is to contact those lenders and contact as many as possible. Some are captive to dealerships like PACCAR Financial or Volvo or Crossroads that work directly with dealerships. And I envision that the new pilot program will effectively be the same way, where you have enrolled lenders who are now going to be talking to individual borrowers. And granted, you can't charge over 20%, but if you start dictating what the finance interest charges are supposed to be, I can tell you will have less participants in the program. So just a word of caution about creating too many hurdles for lenders outside of the state doing their own loan program, which they tried years ago and found that they were not able to. The best way, and it's been proven that this truck loan assistance program as it exists today has been very successful, primarily because lenders are able to use their own underwriting criteria to determine risk of that particular borrower. So, the interest rates, they are what they are. This is not like buying a house or even a passenger vehicle. These are commercial trucks that are used for profit and they're mobile, right? So for lenders, this is not a 6% interest rate. These are 12, 14% interest rates. So that's why that higher contribution, especially on the higher GVWR category, I feel like will entice more lenders to come in and to not be trying to mitigate their risk as much because they have that higher contribution level. The only thing is at higher contribution levels, it really, the money can go fast. So especially when we're talking about trucks that are $420,000. So excited about this program for sure. And I know that the lender partners that we work with are very interested in it, but we have to understand it is still a private business decision by lenders to underwrite, let's call it experimental technology. I hate to say it, but just because from a lender perspective, there is no secondary market that exists. And that's the main way that they mitigate their risk. So if the state wants to get even more creative and guarantee a residual value on the trucks, or wants to also contribute to a back end grant to make lenders feel comfortable, I feel like we're still going to be seeing these interest rates, especially when we're talking about small fleets. So just a word of caution in trying to cap that at too low of a level, it will stave off participation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that follow-up on that, Matt. Eric, did you have anything that you wanted to add there?
Was there a question someone had on loan loss reserve accounts, or
Maybe you can
in
just
that Q&A?
can you briefly walk through how the loan loss reserve accounts work for the truck loan program? And then after that, if May has any follow-up questions, she can contact me or you. I'll drop my email in the chat though, so anyone can contact me.
Okay, well, yeah, in the current loan program, the maximum contribution rate is 14%. So basically, so for every $100, it's based on the enrolled loan amount. So for every $100 that's of a loan, the state puts in $14 if at a 14, which is a maximum in the current truck loan program. And that money then goes into a loan loss reserve account. So with every loan, and the loan loss reserve account will get bigger, and that account is used to reduce the risk for the lenders. So I think Zions, in the current program, Zions Bank handles there's a trustee that handles all the whole loan loss reserve accounts for every participating lender. So each participating lender has their loan loss reserve account. So for every loan, and they get, as every loan's enrolled, a reserve account grows. And then, so if there's any defaults, then the lender will have the loan loss reserve account to use, and so they don't lose any money on the default. And so in the current loan program, then they would file a claim like with the CPCFA, and then CPCFA processes the claim, and if it's approved by them, then they'll get the money for a default, so they avoid losing money. But at the same time, by having that loan loss reserve account that they can fall back on, then it reduces the risk for the lenders. It can provide much lower rates, much more reasonable rates for the borrower. Because of course, in the current loan program, it's for the smaller businesses, smaller fleets that may not have the greatest credit. So without the loan program on the outside, just doing conventional loan, they would have super high interest rates with the really high, but they wouldn't be able to afford. So, but with the loan program, having that loan loss reserve account, then they get there's a maximum 20% interest rate, and a lot of borrowers even get lower rates than that. I think the last recent, the average interest rate has been about 13% as of late. Yeah, so 20% is the maximum in the current loan program.
Great.
But a lot of borrowers will get a lower rate. It's based on the individual loan and the conditions between the borrower and the lender.
Thank you for that overview, Eric. We do have a few more comments and questions that have come into the Q&A, so I'll go ahead and start on those now. Lauren Navarro, good points to Matt about the secondary market. As I mentioned, that is something that SB 372 envisions. Thank you for that comment. And we have Chris Lerma. What was the total approved funding for the truck loan assistance program in 2021 and how much was utilized? I am concerned that 1/3 of the funding will be allocated to this unproven small pilot program and taken away from a very successful established proven program. The allocation should be much smaller until there are established proven manufacturers, more charging infrastructure, and a proven secondary market. Eric, do you have data on the 2021, how much funding was approved for the truck loan assistance program?
Yeah, for 2021-22, the board approved 28.64 million for the program.
And do you know how much was utilized?
Well, for 2021, the CARB contributed about 44 million.
Thank you for that. The next comment is from Gary Shway. The lenders we have talked to don't assume any residual value after the 5 to 6 year financing period. And given the state of today's EV technology, I am in agreement that no residual value should be assumed. Thank you for that comment, Gary. The next comment / question, as the Fed rates increase, cost of capital to lenders increase with a 20% interest cap and increasing cost of funds. The margins compress and may have the unintended consequence of a narrowing credit window for lenders, perhaps tying the rate cap, the federal funds rate increases and decreases. Or perhaps consider tying the rate cap, pardon me. Thank you for that comment, Andrew. Next, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know if there were more.
There's one more.
Oh, okay.
So this is Tom Lee. Thanks CARB staff and Matt for the explanation. While I do understand it's still business for the banks and the risks involved with the advanced tech, I was just reporting the frustrations from owner operators hoping for a high rate. I will continue this discussion with CARB staff in the future. Thank you for that comment.
Great. All right, so thank you for the comments. It looks like we're at a point where we can move forward. So we're gonna move forward and talk a little bit about SB 372 and how the truck loan program and the proposed ZE loan pilot fit into this larger effort. SB 372 was approved late last year by the governor, and the bill directs CARB and the CPCFA to develop and administer a program to make financing tools and non-financial supports available to owners of medium and heavy-duty vehicle fleets to fully enable their transition to zero-emission vehicles. This program is referred to as the Medium and Heavy-Duty Zero-Emission Vehicle Fleet Purchasing Assistance Program. The bill identifies a wide variety of elements that are necessary to assist different sizes and sectors of medium and heavy-duty fleets in their transition to zero emission. This includes financial supports that are targeted towards underserved communities, non-financial supports such as technical support, also outreach and marketing campaign, incorporating stakeholder feedback, determining metrics to determine program success, and coordination and alignment with partnering state agencies. So the bill specifies that CARB may allocate funding from, but not limited to, the Air Quality Improvement Fund, this is AQIP, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, referred to as GGRF, and or the General Fund. So as we already stated, AQIP is the only source of funds available for the existing truck loan program. CARB and other state agencies are already working on some of these elements that meet the goals of the program. And we do know that there's a lot more that can be done to support these fleets that are making their transition to zero emission. We know we need to get a lot of stakeholder feedback on what additional supports are needed and where there may be gaps that we can help fill. So in June, we're going to begin a coordinated stakeholder outreach and community engagement effort to discuss SB 372 and these truck transitioning strategies in more detail. So this could include listening sessions, community meetings, and individual meetings with stakeholders to get feedback to design and inform the SB 372 effort. So we extend the invitation to you to reach out to us directly and let us know who should be included in this discussion. Our team is also available to have one-on-one meetings, and we're open to suggestions of who we should be talking to and meeting with. So does anyone have any questions? I guess we'll open that back up if there's anything specific to SB 372.
All right, we do have a hand up. So again, please state your name and affiliation. For anyone else wanting to make a comment, if you are joining us by phone, please press #2 to raise your hand. If you're joining via computer, you can use the raise hand feature to make a verbal comment, or you can submit a written comment or question in the Q&A feature of Zoom. So again, please state your name and affiliation. Matt Schrapp, I will allow you to talk and you should be able to unmute on your end.
Thank you again, Matt Schrapp with Harbor Trucking Association, and thank you for allowing me to talk. I'm just waiting for the point where you don't allow me to talk anymore, which hasn't happened before. Just kidding. Thank you again. And really, I encourage everyone on the line here. The questions are good in the chat, but please, we need to engage in this discussion. And when we think about who the appropriate people are to reach out to about how this program should be structured, I think the first place to start would be the currently enrolled lenders, or participating lenders rather, for the existing truck loan assistance program. I think having a focused conversation with them about some of the challenges that they have, and obviously lenders are going to have to assume a 0% residual on the back end, but all that means is that the cost of financing is going to be higher because there is no residual value, and that translates directly into the structure of the loan, which effectively boils down to interest rate, term, fees, etc. Question on, I guess, SB 372, that it does not require any type of fees by the lender. Is that correct, to participate in the program?
Eric, I'm going to pass that to you if there's any additional fees by the lender to participate in the existing truck loan program. Is that, I see Matt has his hand up.
There's no fee for the lenders.
Okay, I see that Matt has his hand up again. Katie, I'm not sure if
I'm
you
still
can.
unmuted.
Okay, perfect. If you had a follow up to that.
I did, yeah, and I wasn't
Okay.
speaking about the existing program, because in the truck loan assistance program, there is not fees on behalf of the lender. In other CalCap programs, there are both lender and borrower fees, and depending on the program, that fee can actually be reimbursed back to the lender, or excuse me, back to the borrower. For instance, in the electric vehicle charging infrastructure program, which already exists under CalCap, which folks can take advantage of today, right now, which for whether it's medium, light, heavy, or otherwise, that program currently exists today. And so when we think about the infrastructure component of this, maybe we might want to investigate this existing program. And I guess my question was specific to SB 372. And just to my knowledge, I don't believe that there's any contemplation of fees on behalf of the participating lenders. And I would suggest that there wouldn't be any additional fees put on the lender because it will just be passed on to the borrower at the end of the day. It's just for better or worse, that's how it works. So again, thinking of who the appropriate people are to engage in these discussions, you really need to get the lender's perspective because, these are not venture capitalists who are lending out this money. These are bona fide California finance lenders with California finance licenses who already do commercial loans. They're the best place to start. There's nobody else who's going to know the marketplace better because that's literally their business is to lend out money. And so knowing who those lenders are who are currently lending out on heavy duty equipment will be great because they can utilize their own outreach capabilities and marketing, take a little pressure off the state. And it's also important to maintain that same level of contribution to keep those lenders enticed, because in the current program, it's actually a scaled where if you're over $1 million enrolled, then your contribution rate starts decreasing. So to keep that contribution rate, which should be higher on the Class 8 side and scaled on the lower side, but to keep it consistent, I think is important. I don't believe that SB 372 prevents any of that from happening. So again, I feel like the best place to start is with this lender, with the lender list. A targeted outreach to them is going to be critical because it's not just banks who have, FDIC and protection. It is finance companies who don't have that same type of protection. So their cost of funds is different because they're typically borrowing from banks to lend out money. So yeah, I would say start with that list and just chip away. I think probably a targeted workshop with those lenders in particular, perhaps facilitated by CPCFA, might be helpful.
Thank you, Matt. Actually, we are planning a lender roundtable with CPCFA for next week. So we're going to be talking to them specifically. And if needed, we can meet with some of them one-on-one too. So thank you for that feedback. And then also in terms of SB 372, there are no fees listed in the bill.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Our next speaker is Jesus Sandoval. I will ask you to unmute and you should be able to unmute on your end. Jesus, it looks like you are unmuted, but we are unable to hear you. We're still unable to hear you. You may benefit from looking at your audio selection on the microphone in the bottom left corner. But if you're unable to submit a verbal comment, you're always welcome to submit a comment or question into the Q&A as well. Just while Jesus is working on that, we do have one comment written into the Q&A. So great work so far on SB 372. We look forward to working with you in the future. That's from Lauren Navarro. Thank you, Lauren. And Gary Shway has a question. What is the possibility for a different approach? Could the pilot actually pay lenders the difference between a set commercial interest rate, for example, 17%, and a set rate given to borrowers, for example, 5%?
That is an interesting concept, Gary. So that's definitely something that we can think about more and how that could, something we can consider. So thank you.
And Jesus, it looks like we're still unable to hear you. So if you want to submit your question either to the Q&A or again, you're welcome to email Danielle. She's posted her email in the chat. Either of those options are available to you. Sorry that there were some technical difficulties today.
I'm going to go ahead and include my email address in the chat again, just so it's, I guess it's probably clear because I'm the only one sending messages to the chat probably.
And we do have another question in the Q&A. Heidi Sickler asks, could CEC or CARB grant funding be used to pay back loans?
That's an interesting concept as well. I don't think that any of our existing grant funding programs at CARB allow to repay existing loans. So I'm not sure if there are any mechanisms that would allow for that because many of them are for new purchases.
Thank
Don't
you,
know if-
Danielle. And that concludes all of the questions in the Q&A, and there are no raised hands.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with some of my next steps. And then if additional questions come in, we can address those as well. And then also I will just leave it open to our panelists if there was anything additional that you wanted to add to the conversation, either now or after I go through some of our next steps and upcoming details. So Matt did lead right into the idea of meeting with our lenders, and that fits nicely in that we're having our lender roundtable with CPCFA. CPCFA will be hosting the lender roundtable on next Wednesday, the 11th at 10 a.m. And so the lender roundtable is for current CalCap lenders. So current active lenders have received an invite. So if you are a current active lender for CalCap and you didn't get that invite, then you'd want to contact CPCFA for more information. So in terms of the funding plan and the truck loan assistance program, staff will be working to draft the truck loan assistance and propose the e-pilot write-up for the draft funding plan. If you do have comments that you would like to submit in writing, if you can please get us those by next Wednesday, the 11th, then they can be considered for our draft write-up. And on the 21st of July, CARB will host the second funding plan workshop. So before this workshop, a draft funding plan will be released, which will include preliminary recommendations for the final funding plan. And the draft funding plan will serve as a guide for the conversations at the July 21st working group or workshop. So the proposed funding plan, it is expected to be released in October with board consideration in November. So these dates are tentative and they may change. So be sure to keep an eye out for any Gov delivery emails and check our website for updates. And I'd encourage you to subscribe for our Gov delivery emails if you haven't already. We can get a link for that to put in the chat as well. And I just like to reiterate that our doors are always open and we're happy to meet with you outside of the formal funding plan process and work groups and workshops. So if there's anyone that would like to reach out to us directly, you can reach me via email. And with that, we really appreciate your participation today and sharing your thoughts and feedback. We got a lot of good stuff today and really appreciate your time. So I guess I'll just leave a few minutes for any additional comments or feedback from our participants or panelists.
So we do have one question. Lauren Navarro
Okay.
was asking if you could repeat the dates again.
Okay, so for the lender roundtable, that's going to be next Wednesday, the 11th, May 11th. And for our next funding plan workshop, it's going to be the second overall funding plan workshop. That's going to be on July 21st. And then in terms, I guess I should say also, sorry, in terms of the funding plan, the proposed funding plan, it will be released in October and we'll be going to the board tentatively in November.
And I'm going to go ahead and type that out and put it in the Q&A just in case anyone wants to reference it as well.
Thank you.
So that's there. And we do have one raised hand. So Gary, I will unmute your mic. Please state your affiliation and unmute on your end.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Gary Schway with Two Daughters Logistics. I wanted to thank you for this overall meeting, but also wanted to maybe ask for a little bit of discussion or some insight about kind of my last suggestion or just idea, which was just about actually using the pilot program to pay the difference between a kind of a set interest rate for lenders, kind of guaranteeing us a set interest rate for lenders, but offering borrowers a lower percentage rate. I was just curious if you'd be willing to maybe ruminate and just kind of maybe kind of discuss pros and cons, or if that's like totally out of scope of what has been, or what could be considered.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to kick it to one of our other panelists on the line, because I'm not sure if that's something that anyone knows off the bat is allowed, or is even a consideration on something that we could do with the loan.
Yeah, we would have to do, this is Doreen with CPCFA. We don't do anything like that currently. So obviously this is outside our regular program regulations and what we do. So it would have to be a research and discussion thing.
Yeah.
Hi, this is.
Thanks, Jessica. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Hi, Gary. Yeah, thanks for all your suggestions today. I was intrigued by that idea, and that is definitely something that we'd like to look into a little bit more. I know Doreen said that doesn't fit necessarily perfectly the CalCap model, but I think there's a lot of cool ideas there, because that would help the lenders to reduce their risk, and it would also help the borrowers and the new zero emission truck owners to have a little bit more manageable payment. So I definitely see the merits there. I just don't, we haven't done anything like that before. So we would need to look into it, and how it is with all the bureaucracy, but we definitely want to look into that. I've got it written down as one of the ideas to follow up on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that.
And we did have another question come into the Q&A. Anthony Marin asks, can there be a cap placed on the down payment amounts, maybe in exchange for a higher contribution amount?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea as well. So something else that we can definitely look into further and see if there's a possibility there that we can work with.
And then a comment from Matt Trapp. Interesting idea, but it sounds like an administrative nightmare. The interest rate, in terms of the interest rate concept.
Yeah, these are all definitely new and innovative ways of thinking, and exactly what we want to do and get out of SB 372 and new ideas for the program. So thank you so much for all of this feedback. It's very helpful. All right.
Looks like Matt Trapp has his hand raised, so I will
Okay.
ask you to unmute and you will be able to speak.
Thanks again, Matt from HTA. And I didn't want to like poo-poo Gary's idea necessarily in the chat there, as it can come off a little bit snarky. My only thing with trying to be too creative with this stuff is that the complexity just lends itself to additional administrative issues, as well as the interest rate the commercial interest rate is going to vary by lender and borrower. And I just, not to couch the lenders in any certain way, but I think that it's better and more straightforward to just provide that higher contribution level with the understanding that, there's a large reserve pool amount that they are able to leverage against additional loans. And so as you build up your reserve pool, you can issue more loans because you have a higher reserve pool, which in fact is mitigating your risk. And what's interesting about, instead of just a straight cash payment, is that it's truly about mitigating risk, because if you never have any defaults, the way the current loan program works is that effectively after a certain amount of time, or as long as you don't fall under an outstanding loan to enrolled loan to outstanding loan threshold, that the money is actually recaptured and put back into the program. So it continues to revolve. The only time the money is really truly spent is if you have a default. So that's what sets that's what really gives the lessened risk. The, paying a finance company for a difference in what that perceived commercial rate would be, and then fixing a lower rate to a borrower, again, that's just really paying the lender. And while for my lending friends out there, I'm sure that they wouldn't necessarily say no to that. But the spirit of the program is to really continue and stretch this money out as far as possible. So that's why this reserve pool contribution is super straightforward. People understand it. You have the ability to build out a reserve pool. So just some questions on that. But it's great to hear some fresh perspective on how to look at this. I can tell you that, the state, again, is, they tried to do their own direct loan program, and that was too much of a challenge for them, is why they brought CPCFA in to administer this. It was for a reason, because it can get relatively complex, and they're the experts, and they know that reserve pool contribution truly works. It has been. So just some thoughts there. I'll stop now. I promise, Danielle.
That's fine. Thank you so much for your comments.
Okay, and currently we do not have any open questions or raised hands, so I will just put on a little 2-minute mental timer for any last call, raised hands, verbal comments that anyone wants to make, or getting in any typed comments. Again, just as a last reminder, if you're joining by phone and you would like to submit a verbal comment, you can press #2 to raise your hand. And if you're joining via computer, you can press the raise hand feature or submit a question or comment using the Q&A. Again, we'll stop the webinar in about 2 minutes here. Danielle, while we're waiting, you want to post your email just one more time in the chat again for anyone who missed it as well?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
And I also posted a link to our Gov delivery. So if anyone was interested in signing up for automated emails, you can enter your email address and then select the list that you wish to subscribe to. So if you want to select our funding plan list, then you would get the emails on the truck loan assistance program and the proposed CE pilot.
All right, and we are at the end of that 2-minute mark. So Danielle, if you have any closing remarks.
Just want to thank everyone so much for your participation. And if you do have any comments, feedback, want to set up a one-on-one meeting, then please get in touch with me via email. So thank you.